Now, before God created life, there was nothing, as we know it. And then he created us, which we're in on organic world, so as you can see here. Something else is missing. I won't be right back, because, oh, here you go. Well, in any case, God created life, and there you go. And after he created life, he created us, in his image. A man and a woman, which both of them together make three. God created us by thinking, apparently. Just by thinking, we're there. So here we have God's thought, which is portrayed here by light. According to the Bible, it's by speaking, so it's sort of a communication or visuals. Just by thinking, we're there, or by looking as well. Now we've done a very similar thing, which we'll get into that later on.
Adam and Eve's evolution took a turning point when they tasted an apple.
Here we have an apple, and that's a turning point. Now, what the turning point is actually there is a certain point in human history, which is this one, where we've received a conscience. That's by tasting an apple. Now, we're not sure if it is an apple, portrayed here, as you see Adam and Eve. But what we do know is there is a certain point in the human history of life where we discovered what right and wrong is, we've discovered we're naked, and we have another apple. Now, Apple computers have also a turning point. Now, this is the Apple computer, and the turning point is that every Apple computer you can have at home. Here we have the first logo of Apple computer. So the ones you saw just before was the new logo. Now, the first logo of the Apple computer, you have Newton and an apple. So here's another turning point as well, using an apple, and this turning point mentions that we know where we are in the world thanks to an apple falling off a tree. We have different ways of looking where we come from. Here you have the religion, how it portrays where we come from. So we come from Adam and Eve, from the first human, and God created by thinking, and we're there. Then you have the biological way of thinking about it, where everything has a reason, so this is for that. And we were an ape, and slowly, there was a big bang, and everything's logical. What happens when you mix them together?
This is applicable to their thought patterns as well, and so not contradicting the Bible. The set foot for newly introduced intelligent design theories. Intelligent design emerged in sync with computer developments that boosted scientific calculations.
Now, I mentioned the computer is built in our image. Now, this is the brain of a computer. I don't really know how it works, but what it does is yes and no, on and off. So, for instance, I can ask him a few questions, like, for instance, computer, do you believe in God? Now, the computer can either answer yes or no, because that's how we've made it.
Intel Sapiens versus Power, Neanderthals.
We are organic, and this section is missing. Now, this is the Neanderthal. They were much smarter than we were. They've discovered death before we've discovered death. They were peaceful, they were vegetarian, well, fruitarians, as a matter of fact. And these are Homo sapiens, these are representations of us. Much more aggressive, we discovered fire, killing, and much more of them. Now, there's two options. One of them is we've just wiped them out by sheer numbers. And the other option is we've intertwined and mixed. So this is the mind of the Neanderthal. Now, as I said, the Neanderthals are extinct. It lives no longer, and it's a thinking process. So before I was asking a computer processor, do you believe in God? And he answered me yes or no. We can't ask this one anymore because it's extinct. Another thing that is extinct, I can't ask this processor anymore because this is the processor of Mac, for Apple. Now, the reason I can't ask this processor anymore is because Apple computers now use a brain of a PC, which is an Intel. I've been talking lots about computers. This is a human. Let's regard him for the moment as a computer. So I'm going to ask him a few things. So you're a computer, you're a robot. How much do you know about yourself? How much do you know about your body? So the computer, the robot says, could be analysed as a human computer, which is in the story. I know 90% of my body, how I move, what my muscles are made, the chemical composition, and so on whatsoever. Okay, great. So what's the missing 10%? How come you don't know 100% of your body? I said, well, that's easy, because the reason is that I don't know a lot about my mind. I don't know how I think. How much of your mind do you know, Mr. Robot? He said, yeah, well, nowadays, I know 10% of the chemicals in my mind. They're going, okay, so I know, I don't know everything what's going on there. I know how I move, but I don't know how I'm thinking. So how much are you thinking? He says, oh, well, I'm using 3% of my mind. Right? So what this robot is actually saying, he's saying, I know how I move, but I don't know how. And how is he saying that? I know 90% of my body, 100% how I move, 10% of my mind, and I'm using 3%. So I make a calculation, that's 10% times 3% equals 0.003%, which is actually next to nothing. So in fact, he's saying, I know how I move, but I've got no idea what's going on up in there.
Darwinism has it that man and animals change their DNA to better suit their environment.
Now Darwin, he discovered that there is an evolution which is the body evolution, and our body changes, which you can see. Something you can't see is the thought. He's also saying that our thinking process is changing. According to Darwin, slowly the environment changed until we get the beautiful women of today, according to the surroundings. That's also by thinking. Now,
the history of man.
With a male, it's a bit different. Actually, I was going to use my laser beforehand, but anyway. So here you have an ape. Slowly, you get on to the next ape, and then we discovered fire, we discovered killing, and then we became sportsmen, and then we've invented the computer. Now, as soon as we've invented the computer, we don't need all of these, because the computer can do everything for us.
Analog versus digital.
Here you have the digital dimension and the analog dimension. Now, can they mix? Well, they can mix. This is the first ways they mix, just by movement. So you have an organic substance, which is moved by a computer, going left or right. Now, about 10 years ago, you could move cockroaches by electrocuting them, and they can go right or left, just as you move this water. And today, with computers, you can do a lot more. You can make this mouse even jump. Now, if you try to remember, we don't know a lot about how we move, we don't know how the mind, but we do know how to manipulate it, because we've mapped the mind. Back in the olden days, there was a big computer called ENIAC. Now, what ENIAC did was 2 + 2 = 4, which we've seen before, it actually equals 3. Now, this is the biggest computer in the world, and what it does is something I've got no idea how it does it. It calculates the weather, which is something that we can't do. But 50 years ago, with the ENIAC, people couldn't count or read, so that did something that they couldn't do either. Now, what computers can't do is calculate why there's problems in the Middle East. Luckily, we have humans' perspective, and this is the reason why the Middle East is in deep shit. Now, computers are advancing, so perhaps they could calculate this in the future. Hope none of you are offended. Now, this is the computer tree. Now, try to imagine this wasn't actually an organic tree. It's a bit difficult to imagine. I mentioned the ENIAC computer. I'll show you briefly the ENIAC computer. This is the biggest computer and the first computer. Very stable, never crashes, 2 + 2 = 4 all the time. So this is the ENIAC, the biggest computer. As computers get faster and faster, they also get smaller and smaller, and less stable and less stable. Now try to imagine this was actually a real tree. Now with a bit of wind, the trunk is always stable, and the twigs at the top are not so stable. Thank you very much.